insist that post the 2024 Lok Sabha Assembly and elections, the Modi government has lost its mojo, its vim, its direction. Will have to take back their words today. The NDA cabinet has cleared the mother of all political reforms, unarguably the biggest and without doubt bitterly contested in independent India's history. It is said that in the upcoming winter session of Parliament, the NDA is most likely to table a bill mooting simultaneous Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha elections. The reform, also popularly known as the One Nation, One Poll or ONOP, also envisages that urban body and panchayat polls will be held within the next 100 days of the simultaneous Lok and Vidhan Sabha elections. That means that there will be one election in two tiers. In the first tier, you will have the Lok Sabha and the Vidhan Sabha election, and in the second tier, within 100-day interregnum, you will have the panchayat and the local body elections. The NDA cabinet unanimously accepted the report of the panel led by ex-President Ram Nath Kovind examining the feasibility of One Nation, One Poll. The Kovind panel sees merit in the move to hold ONOP, as it is called, as I've been telling you. Holding simultaneous polls will, quote, transform the electoral process and governance and optimize scarce resources, the report says. Among the advantages listed are that ONOP makes the electoral process easier for voters, synchronizing polls, and I will, viewers, list some of the recommendations to the right of your screens as I go through them. Synchronizing polls will also result in key reforms being less held up due to electoral concerns on account of frequent election cycles. Let's put those graphics up on the screen. There will also be reduced delays in projects due to the Model Code of Conduct impositions, will save precious taxpayer money. Politicians and officials can focus on long-term issues rather than frequent elections, which will result in better governance, faster economic growth, and therefore a more stable economy. Those points are there on your screens. This is why the Kovind panel has recommended ONOP. Not just that, a single round of elections, the panel says, will allow businesses and corporate firms to take decisions without fear of adverse policy changes. We've seen certain bills being passed through Parliament and then withdrawn, pulled back, or put on the ice. Some of them have economic implications. And when a bill is passed, a company in that sector might prepare, invest money to see the benefit or at some level or the other to protect its interests. But when that bill is pulled, when it is put on ice, all that investment goes down the tube. And this usually happens around election times. There's also cost saving to consider. Synchronizing elections would reduce high election costs and corruption, benefiting the economy. Lot of money changes hands. A lot of it is money that is undeclared. And of course, a lot of money goes into organizing elections. Less frequent elections would lower political polarization also. Hate speeches and rivalry constantly clashing at the hustings creates negativity. It also leads to a vendetta-oriented approach to politics. The panel has also reasoned that eventually holding elections at all three levels for the Lok Sabha, for state assemblies, for panchayats will, quote, avoid disruption of supply chains and production cycles due to migrant workers seeking leave of absence to cast their votes, unquote. The One Nation, One Election push will also prevent policy paralysis, says the Kovind committee, and do away with, quote, atmosphere of uncertainty, unquote. The government argues it's brought on by frequent elections. So I've taken you through some of the big ticket benefits that accrue when you adopt a one election, one India, one poll, one election, simultaneous election concept or policy. The high-profile panel said that 32 parties and prominent judicial figures, including former Supreme Court Chief Justices and High Court judges, had backed this measure. But unfortunately, the Congress and some of its partners, not all, some in the India bloc haven't accepted it. Here is Mallikarjun Kharge, Congress chief. He says one nation, one election is only a BJP issue to divert attention. This is against the constitution. This is against democracy. This is against federalism. The country will never accept this, unquote. However, making ONOP a reality will require 2/3 of parliament to side with the BJP, or at least 2/3 of members in both houses of parliament who are present and voting. This is because the proposed system involves amending in at least 6 places the constitution. The BJP-led central government has a simple majority in both houses, but is short of that 2/3 mark by 52 votes in the Rajya Sabha and about 72 in the Lok Sabha. There you can see, viewers, what is required, 364. NDA is 54%. What is required is 67%. And of course, in the Rajya Sabha, I've already told you that that number is within range for the incumbent government. After this, after it goes through the 2 houses, this bill must be ratified by all states and union territories. Here the BJP is better placed as of now. It's in power in 20 states. Ratification is required by about 14 states. So as of now, it looks fairly comfortably placed to at least pass the state test. Now, for all the Congress party's objections, it seems to have forgotten that India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, who was a self-professed committed federalist, didn't have a problem with one nation, one poll. In fact, all centre and state elections from 52 right up till almost 1970 were held simultaneously. And that obviously means that today's Congress doesn't agree with the Congress of the past. It says this is against federalism, but let's not forget, it was Indira Gandhi's Congress party that dealt mortal blows to the federal structure, to state and centre relations by using Article 356 and other instrumentalities to sack governments at the state level. Governments that had been elected with majorities, overwhelming support. Let's open this up. Viewers, let's open this up. Let's get different stakeholders, lawyers who examine the constitutionality of this. We're going to speak to a former CEC. There are analysts. There's Dr. Ranganathan, who has talked about ONOP in the past. Let's open this up. Let me begin with Mr. Krishnamurthy, former CEC. Mr. Krishnamurthy, thank you for speaking to us. I just want to ask you, what do you make of ONOP? Do you think we should go ahead with it?
It is too simple a question that you are asking. Actually, I have always held the view that administratively, financially, and from the point of view of management of the elections, it is a good idea to have the elections at one single point of time. There is no second opinion on that. But however, considering the constitutional provisions and the political challenges ahead, if it is possible to implement, well, it may be even desirable. But these challenges have to be met before they are implemented.
Now, what are the nature of these challenges, Mr. Krishnamurthy, that you are referring to?
First of all, the constitutional provision, the high-level committee has given certain suggestions. I'm not a constitutional expert. I'm not a constitutional lawyer either. This is a matter which I suppose ultimately it will go to the court. And the court may decide finally. Politically, the opposition parties seem to be questioning this proposal from the point of view of federal interest, saying that when you conduct the election simultaneously, the federal issues may be, or the regional issues or the state issues may not receive the attention at the time of the voting. Here again, in practical terms, we have found in many elections, the voters have voted for different parties for the central government and the state government. So even this objection may not be, really justified. But then in political terms, how the parties are going to face what issues they have, whether they will accept the proposal is very difficult for me to say. As an administrator, yes, I agree that bunching the elections is desirable. But before that, I thought I'd also add, you see, in many states, the elections are held in 5 phases or 8 phases, as the case may be now. If you're going to have simultaneous election, we should also consider seriously to avoid multi-phased election in one state. Each state, ideally, it is better to have election in only one day, because it has not only administrative advantages, but also it avoids possible, movement of voters from one constituency to another to influence or to manipulate or impersonate and all that. So while you are considering the simultaneous election, we should also consider a single phase election in each state, although in some states it may be difficult, for example, Kashmir or for that matter, Bihar or UP. But our endeavor should be to reduce it to a single phase election in each state, even when you are holding simultaneous election. There is another point which I thought,
let's come to that. I just want to open this up. Dr. Ranganathan, Sanjay Hegde and Kamru Chaudhary, let's bring them into this. Dr. Ranganathan, what do you make of this move? Many people are attributing, obviously, political motives. Some people are saying this is going to strike at the federal roots of our polity, this, that, the other. You've heard usually what is being said. I can elaborate on that if you want, but I think we've been here before. So I'd like to hear once again your views.
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to my esteemed fellow panelists. They are the real experts here. I speak as a layman. But before I come to the thrust of my thesis, may I please kind of prod you to answer a small trivia, if I may. Rahul, what is common between GST, erecting tall flagpoles, bullet trains, OROP, playing national anthem in cinema halls, Aadhaar, Land Acquisition Act, CAA, the new parliament building, the 3 farm laws, and one nation, one election?
Yeah, opposition to this by the Congress party and so on and so forth.
No, that comes secondly.
The Supreme Court.
They were all Congress ideas. Each and every one of them. Each and every one of these 10, 12 ideas were actually Congress ideas. They were implemented by the Congress, including the new parliament building was an idea, the 3 farm laws was in the constitution, GST, so on and so forth. I gave you a list. But as is the norm, because BJP is going to bring them, including possibly one nation, one election, the Congress is going to oppose this hammer and tongs. This is the tragedy of this country. When you are in power, you not only propose these ideas, you also implement this. Remember, it was until 1970 that we as a country were already implementing one nation, one election.
Yeah.
We had 4 or 5 general and state elections under the same one umbrella at the same time until Mrs. Indira Gandhi kind of, abrogated that. The point is there are pros and cons, and I'm not an expert, but at least to me, I'm undecided as yet. Let me list out the pros and cons so that, your viewers can make their own minds up. The pros are three. Number one, you will save an enormous amount of money when it comes to, for example, arranging and implementing and going forward with these elections. To give you an example, Lok Sabha, it is estimated that the central government spends to the tune of 6,000 crores. That's the official figure. Unofficial, it would be possibly 10 times that much. And every state government also spends the same amount. Every politician spends the same amount. So it totals to possibly more than 1 lakh crores that is spent possibly on state and central election. If they are held in one go, you're going to save enormous amount of money. Number two, you will save enormous amount of administrative costs, because the elections, to arrange for these elections, you need this entire administrative machinery, as the Honorable CEC also mentioned. And if it happens in one go, you are not going to replicate the same administrative officers going from one general election to state election, so on and so forth. And finally, you are going to save a lot of time, effort, money on the security forces that are implemented, that are kind of arranged in every state, going for every state, and then the Lok Sabha election. So these are the three advantages. The disadvantages that I can think of, not the federal structure, that's just hand waving, is the fact that we as a people, I'm not being patronizing, as very emotional people. We get, if some cataclysmic event happens or something happens that kind of brings the entire nation together to one aspect of news or whatever you may call it, an event, the entire voting machinery is going to be, or the voters going to sway by it. I'll give you one example. The assassination of Mrs. Indira Gandhi. You had a newcomer brought in who had zero experience of administration, and he won 415 seats. And had you got state elections at the same time, Congress would have swept each and every state election purely on emotional reasons. So these are the pros and cons, but I as yet am undecided on this.
Undecided on this. Interesting. Look, there are some reasons, and I want to bring back Mr. Krishnamurthy. The marginalization of local issues, some people say national issues would overshadow regional concerns affecting smaller parties in states. There's obviously accountability. Regular elections allow voters, some people say, to constantly hold politicians to account, governments to account more frequently. Fixed tenures, which is something that spins out of this, and we can bring in Mr. Hegde, undermines the no confidence motion, altering democratic process. There is a homogenization of political discourse which may erode local representation and diversity of opinions also. So as Dr. Ranganathan was saying, that look, what if one particular big issue dominates, then everyone lemming-like will probably vote for that political party that espouses it, champions or benefits from it, or has raised expectations around it, and so on and so forth. So there is that problem. And there is obviously many people who also say there's this cost savings that are being talked about. You can't overemphasize that, because at the end of the day, people must speak, and our democracy needs to be vibrant, and there is no price to be paid to ensure that. So there are those views. But Mr. Hegde and Mr. Krishnamurthy are there. Mr. Hegde, where do you stand on this? Do you have a definitive position? If so, why?
Well, I have a definitive position. Basically, I think that this would be violative of the basic structure of the Constitution. The Supreme Court said long ago in Keshavananda Bharati, 13 judges, said that a parliamentary democracy is part of the basic structure of the Constitution. Now, what will happen with a one nation, one election would necessarily be a kind of presidential referendum. It would make the parliamentary system presidential. And I was looking at the amendments which are proposed. What happens if at the end of a Lok Sabha election, you still do not have a Lok Sabha that can continue in that particular combination? Say you have 240, 270, this, that, and the other. Supposing a parliament is dissolved before 5 years, what do? You will have another election only for the unexpired portion. Now, if a Lok Sabha were to be dissolved after 4 years, would you have a Lok Sabha election for 1 year? So it doesn't make sense to me. You may, through all this process, have on one date, one election for the entire nation, one time. But as a continuing process, I don't think it is possible because of the very nature of our polity. The second objection I have was eloquently put by Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia, who said, "Zinda kaum 5 saal intezar nahi karti." So here, where we have elections all over the country from different points of time, issues not only local but national issues also affect local elections, and there are constant pressure release valves. Imagine being stuck with an unrepresentative, unpopular government, and you can do nothing about it for 5 years. What you are doing is possibly inviting some kind of extra constitutional means, which will then come in. So I think that what we have currently gives us much more diversity, gives many more safety valves. And the third thing, far from saving money, you are inviting big money to bet big on one day. A set of what shall we say, businessmen, industrialists, whatever have you, conglomerates, can bet all their money on one side, and those that get left out, or those who think that they have lost out to money power, will then no longer have faith in the democratic process. I think this is too risky as a country. We are a subcontinental sized federation. Over concentration, over domination, over centralization will not work for us.
So, what I can't understand is we've had 5 elections, Mr. Krishnamurthy. Yeah, and it seems, I'll just come to you 1 second, Mr. Hegde. On this point, that look, all of this has all these problems and therefore we should tread with caution. But it appears, Mr. Krishnamurthy, that the founding fathers, they seem to have, the founding fathers of the Constitution, they seem to have been okay with this particular arrangement, this ONOP arrangement. Now, how do you square that with these arguments, Mr. Krishnamurthy? Because these are important arguments. There is precedence.
So, founding fathers did not give any pronouncement on whether the simultaneous elections are to be held or not. But when the Constitution was adopted, the first 3 general elections for both the states and the center took place simultaneously. That is a fact. But there is no constitutional opinion or constitutional ruling whether simultaneous elections should be held or not. One more thing I thought I must bring it to your notice. One of the suggestions of the high-level committee was little difficult for me to accept it, in the sense, they said if the state assemblies go through what is known as a vote of no confidence and the assembly has to be dissolved, the elections will have to be held even for a short period of 1 year, because the date prescribed for simultaneous election is from 2029 parliament elections. In which case, let us assume for argument's sake, a vote of no confidence is passed in a state sometime in 2027 or 28. And the election is, and the assembly, the government falls, new government comes into position. Then the vote of no confidence, if it is passed, the new government will assume office, and they may not hold the office for more than 1 year or 2 years. Mr. Kashyap, one of the members of the assembly, had suggested a solution to this. I feel more attracted by that suggestion. There must be a constructive vote of no confidence, in the sense, when the simultaneous election is adopted as a principle or as a policy, The state assemblies should not be and cannot be allowed to dissolve just on the basis of vote of no confidence, and elections are held immediately thereafter. That seems to be anachronistic, because you are asking for a single poll, simultaneous poll. Then how do you allow the state assemblies to be dissolved if the vote of no confidence is passed? The member has suggested that a vote of no confidence should be deemed as passed only if a new leader is elected and a new government is formed from the same house, so that the tenure of the house remains the same. This will ensure avoidance of frequent elections by dissolution of the houses after a vote of no confidence. This is also a worth consideration, in my opinion.
Yeah, unity
because
kind of government.
You don't want to have too many elections when once you have accepted simultaneous election as a policy. So state assemblies should not be dissolved at drop of a hat by a vote of no confidence. It has to be accompanied by installation of a new government, a new leader to be elected to fill up the remaining tenure of the house.
Tenure. Yeah, that means you basically get together a unity government, Sanjay Hegde. That's what it means. But on that point of money, betting one side, betting on one election, etc., which democracy sees the maximum use of money when it goes to the polls?
Well,
Mr.
can I come
Hegde, which democracy?
We do not have currently a strong two-party system.
Well, that doesn't matter.
In the US, you have, for instance, if you're referencing it, you have the Democrats and their PSCs, you have the Republicans and their PSCs, but that is essentially a presidential form. A parliamentary form is different because you have to take along everyone.
Not necessary.
Right? No,
not necessary. Not necessary.
Of course you have to, because that's, unless you carry the confidence of the House, and the House means the majority of the members of the House. Today we have a parliamentary system. And though it is become semi-presidential,
Mr. Hegde, even America has...
Just 1 minute. Though in practice it has become semi-presidential, especially after the anti-defection law, we still are a parliamentary democracy where everybody is represented. The vast areas of India all have their talking people in parliament. The second point, I just wanted to correct Mr. Krishnamurthy. This part of dissolution for only 1 year and having another for only 1 year applies not only to state legislatures, but even to the Lok Sabha.
Yeah.
Even to the Lok Sabha.
That is a known fact. That's a known fact. But I think that actually helps, because if you have a unity government coming in, I think fundamentally you obviate this business of horse trading, this, resort politics that takes place, etc., etc. Yes. Very quickly, Dr. Ranganathan, I have to also bring in Mr. Kamru Chaudhary. Yes.
Excellent points made by both the Honorable former CEC and Mr. Hegde. Just to elaborate on that, I think this vote of no confidence is, to my mind, an excellent safety valve.
Yeah.
Especially when you have post-poll alliances that, to me, are unconstitutional. You're asking for votes, going hammer and tongs against each other, and after elections, you kind of form a government. So, and number two, I think Mr. Hegde also has a point about, it's when I forget the phrase he used, but when he talked about, course correction. You remember after the Lok Sabha polls, right now, many people, including all of us, are saying that for the Maharashtra polls, the BJP has done course correction. It's gone for khatakat schemes. So yes, it is a fact that there is a fallback system that has come on its own, evolved, whereby a party learns from one election and implements it to the other, and vice versa.
Okay, so let me just bring in Mr. Chaudhary. Mr. Chaudhary, the point is that, look, the Congress seems to be again on a side of a divide where it actually argued from in the past. We've had 5 general elections. And the reason the cycle was broken was because Indira Gandhi used, many people say, unconstitutional means, etc., to bring down state governments. If it was anyone who destroyed the center-state relationship, it was her. So, I mean, if it was okay for Nehru and the people of India under Nehru, why can't it be okay for Indians under Modi?
Yeah, that's the point, It was advantage Jawaharlal Nehru in 1951 to 1967. And so it cannot be an advantage to Narendra Modi once again in this 2029 elections. Why I say this, I listed a number of reasons why one nation, one election destroys the basis of the federal structure of our constitution. And the states, the potential for national regional conflicts is here. India, Rahul, is a diverse country and regional parties play a significant role in many states. Holding simultaneous elections may lead to regional voices to be subjugated, and the national issues will find premise over the regional issues, wherein it will always be the advantage of the pseudo-national parties that are ruling the country right now over centralization of the political power. Then you have got the most important argument is that frequent elections will always hold these netas accountable to the general public. That is the most important reason why frequent elections need to be there in the country. The division of power between the national parties and the state parties need to be defined within the Indian constitution. Otherwise, going for a bipolar polity out here.
Okay.
There is no need for a multi-party democracy out here or elections to be held every year. But I don't understand the logic that is given out here is that the elections will reduce the cost of the on the exchequer. I doubt it, because as the panelists have argued out here, that whatever it may be, you will hold an election for 1 year of the remaining part of the government out here. Then how does it reduce the cost of the elections? You need to conduct the elections. That's the constitutional mandate. More importantly, the campaign polarization that will be there once the the one nation, one election will be there. And why I say this, a more polarized campaign movement can be there. We know in 2019 how Pulwama decided the fate of the 2019 results. We as an Indian, we need to get into the bottom and the crux of the problem that is facing India right now.
So hang on, you have to make up your mind. Mr. Chaudhary, no, I agree with you. There are some points that you make, legitimate points. Others have also voiced them, etc., etc. But on this regional party business, viewers, a large number of regional parties, in fact, within the India bloc, the Samajwadi Party has leapt across and said, no, we are for ONOP. Now, that is a significantly big regional party, 37 MPs in today's Lok Sabha, viewers. That wouldn't be sort of playing with its fortunes, would it? So,
no,
hang on. Then there are many examples where state and Lok Sabha elections have taken place simultaneously and reflected different outcomes. And then, viewers, when we talk about, oh, look, that was Nehru and this is Modi, we were being told that in any case, Mr. Modi was going to win because the elections were rigged. That the playing field is not level. This is despite having these multi-tiered elections at every level. So viewers,
the question out here
look,
is the level playing
these three
field.
examples we need to look at closely. Are we being facetious when we say, oh, we are constricting choice because, we are obviously playing with people's sentiments by expecting them to differentiate at the state level and the central level? Well, there are many states that actually go to the elections, sometimes even within 4 months of the general election, and on that day, there are at least 3 or 4 states that elect their various state legislatures, and we see enough variance there, viewers. Money, they say money will wag the election. People will bet big on one outcome. Well, in America, viewers, I'm not talking about whether it's a presidential election or this election, because there are elections that take place also halfway through a presidential term, and that's the Congress. But just parking that aside, by that logic, England, by that logic, UK, by that logic, 3 or 4 other European top democracies would also then want fragmented elections, provincial elections at different times, and the central parliamentary election at different points. 30 seconds, Dr. Ranganathan, since you're raising your hand, I want to move on after that. Important story. Yeah.
Just on a lighter note, I worry for my good friend's future, Mr. Kamruji, because he said for 15 years Nehru was wrong and destroyed the constitution.
Well, in a manner of speaking, he said that he got back because of this sort of didgeridoo of ONOP. Okay, viewers, let's just move on because this is a very important story and it's caught the national imagination. It has got many people talking. And I'm talking about the ultimate घर में घुसकर मारा counter terror template. What do these words mean, viewers? That I enter someone's den and I strike them there. So this is the ultimate enter someone's den and strike them there counter-terror template. Reports seem to suggest that Israel's Mossad spy intelligence agency is behind the serial handheld pager device explosions that ripped across Lebanon. Without providing any detail, Hezbollah has accused Israel of orchestrating the attack that killed 11 people and wounded 4,000 others. These are the latest numbers. According to Hezbollah, others are pegging this number at 9 deaths. Israel has not commented on the attack or confirmed its involvement, but an NYT report states that Israel intercepted the pagers from Taiwan that detonated in the pockets of thousands of Hezbollah fighters before they reached Lebanon. Israel allegedly tampered with the devices that Hezbollah ordered and placed 3 grams of explosive material next to the battery in each pager. And that resulted in absolute mayhem. Targeted attacks on Hezbollah cadre. Now, many people are, of course, outraging, and I'm talking about a number of so-called human rights activists that are coming out and saying that this is an attack, an absolute attack on humanity. And in doing so, in condemning Mossad, they've also ironically ended up echoing Iran's condemnation of the serial bombings, claiming it was an outrage against humanity. Now let's open this up and ask some fundamental questions. I want to go across to Kalev Ben David, diplomatic analyst with I24 News, who joins us. What do you make of the actions that, according to many, have been undertaken by the Mossad to level the playing field with those that act beyond defined legal constitutional boundaries, like non-state actors, Hezbollah and company?
Right. Well, first of all, I agree with your description of this as sort of the ultimate counterterrorism action. I think it's unprecedented. Of course, Israel and the Mossad have not taken credit, but it does bear the hallmarks of a classic Mossad operation. Reports coming out that although the original company that made these pagers was in Taiwan, they subcontracted to a company in Hungary, which apparently has now closed up shop, which is apparently where these pagers were booby-trapped. But I would make this point. The reports are that some 2,500 people, or overwhelmingly Hezbollah operatives, were injured in this attack. The reports of 9 killed. There are reports of a couple of civilians killed, maybe 2 minors, but rarely in the history of warfare has there been an action that has been so exacting that could take out so many terrorists. Remember, Hezbollah is an organization like Hamas that it has embedded itself in a civilian population. It's sort of embedded itself in the country of Lebanon. It's almost a parasite lurking inside of Lebanon. Israel's had the military capability to destroy Hezbollah, but it hasn't done so because of concern over the civilian population and infrastructure of Lebanon. So this operation appears to be one way for Israel, allegedly, to have struck at Hezbollah with accuracy, almost completely just attacking those Hezbollah operatives without damaging either the civilian infrastructure of Lebanon or of killing other civilians there.
Well, very interesting, very interesting. Let me bring in Sushant Sareen. Sushant Sareen, I mean, if it is Israel that's behind this, then one must salute their determination to protect Israeli lives and the Israeli state.
Yes, of course. But see, Rahul, I think that is what the Israeli security services have always tried to do, most often successfully and sometimes not so successfully. But look, this particular operation is kind of awe-inspiring. I think even the enemies of Israel will accept that this is a pretty cool operation to run. It's like it's both audacious and innovative. My big question is everything that we are hearing right now. I think it's bunkum. How they've done it, nobody really knows. That story in the New York Times, I find it rather far-fetched because look, if you have to rig up a single, it is one thing to rig up a single mobile phone and hand it to a terrorist and then blow him up. But to rig up something like 3,000 to 5,000 pagers, and each one of them, it's a very delicate process to rig an explosive onto a pager, unless of course you bought over the entire factory. Or the batteries were being supplied by a company which had already rigged this kind of a thing. But even that is like very complex because how do you manage to have an assembly line of such kind of bombs which you are putting in the hands of your adversaries? First, you have to have the information that, this particular consignment is going to this particular guy. Maybe they switched the consignments. I don't know how they've done it. It's an extremely complex operation, but has been done to devastating effect. It's kind of crippled the Hezbollah. It's more than crippling the Hezbollah. I think it's dealt a body blow to their morale. Like they must be feeling like such idiots carrying around those pagers which have been blowing up in their hands and unmentionable places. So it's a pretty cool operation, no doubt about it.
Pigeon post is what people will have to start resorting to. Pigeon post. Dr. Ranganathan, that's what's going to happen at the end of the day. If you can't communicate, forget the mobile, then you take on the pager, that blows up. It's some people have apparently got castrated there, Dr. Ranganathan. That's what I've been told. It just blew up in their pants. I mean, it's been quite devastating actually to psyche and to society at large and so on and so forth.
No, clearly this is the one military operation that was literally below the belt. But, to slightly disagree with my good friend Sushant Sareen, because I have seen the way Israel conducts science. I run a lab. The entire nation of Israel is a lab. So, when people think that R&D innovations are coming in bits and pieces from that country, that's wrong. The entire country is churning out R&D. So, this is not really that far-fetched. But I would say couple of points here. I think not since the cracking of the Enigma code in World War II that helped turn the tide of the war, and Turing did it famously, has an operation been carried out that has completely turned the whole counter-terrorism, or as we know it, war on its head. And I think kudos to, of course, Israel, like Britain never did for 20 to 30 years, except that it was the one that invented the radar and broke the Enigma code. But the fact of the matter is that these things are unimaginable until they actually happen and turn out. And maybe 30, 40 years from now, some Israeli who's been carried out this operation will write a book about it. Having said that, I think one point that we should discuss is why on earth was an Iranian ambassador carrying a pager that was kept by terrorists? I think that is the biggest question to be asked. And that is, if ever there was a evidence that Iran is hand in glove with terrorists, that needs to be asked. And as Sushant said, NYT wrote a whole article, but completely managed to not talk about this serious issue.
Well, of course, Iran is xenophobic, homophobic, misogynistic, homicidal, fascist, medieval, Islamist terror state. So, for the ambassador to keep company of this kind of deranged lot is not surprising to me. And they, of course, lecture the world on things like, as they say, and let me just quote Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. He has said that, look, this is the targeting of devices designed to, quote, enhance human comfort, quote, as tools of terror. He also laments the collapse of humanity and the dominance of savagery and criminality. Kalev, David, how do you respond to this?
Well, first of all, the hypocrisy of the Iranian president to say that, considering how the Iranians treat their own people. Let me just say, I agree with your other guests there. The mechanics of this are awe-inspiring, but really, this is a triumph of intelligence. The Israelis or whoever carried that out had to have a complete intelligence about Hezbollah. And that would be impossible without the cooperation of people inside Lebanon, other Lebanese. There had to be that cooperation. And I think this speaks to the degree which other people in Lebanon, other Lebanese, view Hezbollah, which is that Hezbollah is acting in a sense as almost an invasion and occupying force of Iran, as your other guests had. I mean, Hezbollah's allegiance is not to Lebanon, it's to its Iranian masters. And that surely generates a lot of resentment inside Lebanon itself to Hezbollah. And certainly the information that made this possible, and your other guess is, yes, that Israel could have the technological capability. Israel in the past has booby-trapped telephones, for example, used by senior Hamas members in Gaza. This is just scaled up to a great degree. But it is really mainly a triumph of intelligence about Hezbollah that had to come from within inside Lebanon. And that speaks, I think, a lot about how some in Lebanon, many in Lebanon, feel about Hezbollah and its patron Iran.
Well, viewers, Hezbollah's allegiance is to a genocidal plot to eliminate Jews in the state of Israel. And there are people in our subcontinent, in South Asia, on both sides now, in the West and the East, in Bangladesh and Pakistan, that swear an allegiance to a genocidal plot to eliminate Hindus. Now, if the RNAW can inspire itself and develop this capacity, then perhaps, viewers, we could also avert what many people say is an impending fate. So I want to bring in Sushant Sareen on this. We have 30-40 seconds, Mr. Sareen. Do you think this is replicable?
I don't think in the same way. I think the kind of capabilities that the Israelis have built up over decades is something we don't have. I think the kind of technological capabilities also which they have is again, like I said, pretty awe-inspiring. There is a lot we can do, but we tend to be stuck up in a kind of a bureaucracy. And the rest of the ecosystem, as Anand was saying, that yes, the technical innovation and invention is almost like a second nature in Israel, right? We really don't have that to that level in India right now. Perhaps we'll get there, but I think we need to start looking at technology as a tool for fighting terrorism in a much more effective manner. And maybe there's a lot we can learn from the Israelis than what we have already learned so far. And at the same time, there is this irrational fear being expressed that, something like this can happen in India. It can't happen in India because, it's not as though the government of India buys all the particular phone brand from one particular guy and somebody can, rig those things. Yeah. It's not the way it happens in India. So I think this is something which terrorists need to fear, and I think it's good that Israel has put the fear of terrorists, God in them.
Okay, well, I don't know if it's the fear of God, but certainly of something. Yes, death, doctor.
No, I think the rumors are rife that Dawood Ibrahim has stopped using pagers since yesterday.
Well, I don't even know if they have a telecom network that enables anything in Pakistan. But anyhow, that's one of the reasons why we probably won't be able to replicate it.
I do want to add that we have seen in the last, say, 5 years, unprecedented defense cooperation between Israel and India.
Well,
something that didn't exist until recent years. And it's sharing intelligence.
I think the people that you're speaking to on this panel, and perhaps some of the viewers, are supporters of the India-Israel coming together. So I leave it at this, viewers. It's been audacious, but it's also been interesting. I leave it at this. Anand Narasimhan coming up next.
Disturb the peace in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So polls are happening amid renewed terror incidents. You have 24 of the 90 seat that is going to vote today. So all in all, there are 90 seats, and this election in Jammu and Kashmir is going to happen in 3 phases. As I had said before, the first phase happening today, 24 seats are going to poll, 16 seats in the valley, 8 in Jammu region. So 16 seats are going to polls today in the valley, which is extremely significant. And then you have 1.23 lakh first-time voters in phase 1. What is going to be very important is the youth participation. That is something that is going to gain prominence. Just how many youth or youngsters are coming out, jobs, unemployment, those are some very big issues. And also development. You have the BJP who have been stressing time and again not to vote for separatism, to vote for peace, prosperity, for security and for jobs, for livelihood in the state. So that is something that the BJP has been stressing on. You have the National Conference and the Congress Party who want to go back. They are vowing to restore full statehood to Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, they're saying that they'll bring back Article 370 as well. Those are some of the promises that are being made by all of these political parties. As I was mentioning about the BJP contesting on the 17 seats out of 24 seats. And as I had just told you, the Congress's and the National Conference's promises. So the BJP contesting on 17 of the 24 seats. That's an important one. And as I've mentioned, employment, development are going to be the big factors, the big factors that will really be of prominence. So there are those visuals there, people coming out in huge numbers. Arunima, my colleague, joins us me now from Jammu. She's been keeping a very close track. She's been talking to the BSF security forces in the run-up to the first phase of elections. Arunima, some great visuals that we're getting from Jammu region. You know, a lot of enthusiasm, and the voters also looking quite upbeat. They've been speaking to you. So over to you. Fill us in with all the details. How's the josh amongst the voters? Well, unfortunately, we have lost Arunima. We'll just get back to her, but just take a look at all these visuals coming in now from different places, and we will keep getting you more updates. Now, as far as Jammu region is concerned, what's very important to point out here is the ask from the Kashmiri Pandits. They are seeking action on long-standing issues. And they're saying that we want now the government to walk the talk. They want urgent action on their long-standing issues. Obviously, you know, employment is also another area which is of very big concern. Ishan Vani, my colleague, is also going to be getting us all the updates. He's been tracking the developments from Kashmir region. In fact, he just is getting us this report from Bij Bihara, which is Mufti's bastion. Her daughter, in fact, is also going to be contesting. It's her first political battle. Hello and welcome. You're watching Battle of the States, and I wish we were coming to you directly from the Dal Lake, the gorgeous Dal Lake in Srinagar, but we're joining you from the CNN News 18 studios. We're covering the big elections, the Jammu and Kashmir elections. It's a historic one. It's a very important one, and we're also, you know, tracking the developments, people coming out in huge numbers to cast their vote. In fact, there's a lot of enthusiasm among the voters as well. So a warm welcome to all our viewers. Voting has kick-started in this historic Jammu and Kashmir election in phase 1 today. Remember, the state is going to poll in 3 phases, and today is the first phase. It marks the first assembly election since Article 370 was abrogated and was revoked in August 2019.
2 states at the crossroads of change. In Jammu and Kashmir, the stakes have never been higher. Will the promise of peace and progress prevail? In Haryana, as the fight for power intensifies, will alliances and caste equations shape the future? As the battle for states intensifies, tracking every twist, every turn, and every key moment, only on Battle for the States.
Co-powered by
is a key test of the government's policies ever since that big change had taken place. Now, over 23 lakh voters will decide the fate of 219 candidates spread across 24 constituencies in 7 districts. 7 districts are going to polls today. The National Conference and the Congress, they have joined hands. They have come together for this very important elections. The National Conference, in fact, is contesting 51 seats and the Congress Party 32. There was a lot of negotiation, a lot of back and forth. Omar Abdullah also saying that it wasn't really something that was very settling to come together, but compromises have been made, with the Congress getting 32 seats to contest from. 5 seats will also see, quote unquote, a friendly contest between these two important parties between them. BJP, meanwhile, is going to be focusing on gaining ground in Kashmir, where it has really struggled in the past. And that's going to be very important because there's been a lot of change in Kashmir as well ever since the abrogation of Article 370 has happened. Most significant one is the sharp decline in the stone pelting incidents. Now, what's really going to be a worry is the banned Jamaat-e-Islami, which is also participating in these elections. So that's the big one coming in, an update that we're getting you. All right, now let's tell our viewers a little bit more about what is in store in these elections. And we're going to be playing these graphics for our viewers just to give you a good sense. Look at these beautiful shikaras. We've got our shikaras to tell our viewers, about the importance of not just the shikaras, which is such an important thing for Srinagar and all those, who have been going to Srinagar ever since the abrogation of Article 370. Tourism, in fact, has seen a massive increase and people have enjoyed these shikaras. So assembly polls happening after a decade, after 10 long years in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. First elections post the abrogation of Article 370 and, right now, what's really important is that there is heightened terror because we have seen an uptick and surge in terror-related activities, which has been very concerning for the security forces, especially in the Jammu region because of the tough terrain, the forested area. So the militants, they have changed their tactics and they are adopting various means to try and disturb the peace in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So polls are happening amid renewed terror incidents. You have 24 of the 90 seat that is going to vote today. So all in all, there are 90 seats, and this election in Jammu and Kashmir is going to happen in 3 phases. As I said before, the first phase happening today. 24 seats are going to poll, 16 seats in the valley, 8 in Jammu region. So 16 seats are going to polls today in the valley, which is extremely significant. And then you have 1.23 lakh first-time voters in phase 1. What is going to be very important is the youth participation. That is something that is going to gain prominence. Just how many youth or youngsters are coming out, jobs, unemployment, those are some very big issues. And also development. You have the BJP who have been stressing time and again not to vote for separatism, to vote for peace, prosperity, for security and for jobs, for livelihood in the state. So that is something that the BJP has been stressing on. You have the National Conference and the Congress Party who want to go back. They are vowing to restore full statehood to Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, they're saying that they'll bring back Article 370 as well. Those are some of the promises that are being made by all of these political parties. As I was mentioning about the BJP contesting on the 17 seats out of 24 seats. And as I had just told you, the Congress's and the National Conference's promises. So the BJP contesting on 17 of the 24 seats. That's an important one. And as I've mentioned, employment, development are going to be the big factors, the big factors that will really be of prominence. So there are those visuals there, people coming out in huge numbers.
Namaste, Jai Hind and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narsimhan. Bharat's wholesale price index based inflation fell to a 4-month low of 1.31% on an annual basis in August from 2.04% in July due to a reduction in the prices of manufactured products and food items. Food prices inflation stood at 3.11% in August as compared to 3.45% in July. Bharat exported drugs and pharma worth $11.9 billion in April to August 2024 period, marking an 8.1% increase compared to the same period last year. The surge has turned this sector into Bharat's 4th largest category, up from 6th place in 2023. And according to a Grant Thornton survey, investor optimism for India remains strong, with 86% anticipating increased allocation to the country despite global economic challenges. Deal activity in the country has surged, with 643 deals worth US $17.1 billion recorded in the first half of 2024. Bharat's lead from 11th to 5th place in the global GDP rankings and status as the 5th largest stock market further enhance its